believe in double predestination, which isn't true.
Yeah, it's not true. I thought that at first. When I first digged into Calvinism, I was like, wait, they have to believe that. And I quickly realized I was wrong.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, but people make this whole straw man of like, oh, Christianity is just, or that Calvinism is simply double predestination. Like, that's how they explain it. But I was like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Dude, that one person that said it was heretical.
He texted. I love Noah. Like, he texted me and we talked about it.
He texted me too. He apologized to me.
Yeah, he talked to me too. He didn't need to apologize to me. I didn't have like hurt feelings. Like,
I didn't either.
But he's a cool guy. I told him like that takes a lot of humility, so I was proud of him for stuff. But nonetheless, what I will say, and it's what I literally texted him here, is that if unconditional election is biblical, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, or sorry, not unconditional election, total depravity.
Yeah.
And then if you believe total depravity, you have to believe irresistible grace. I think those two things are so essential. And they're just biblical. I
have a question.
And then perseverance of the saints. Like, I believe if you think that you can lose your salvation, you just don't understand the gospel. So
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Someone was trying to argue to me because I was like, yeah, I totally believe in like perseverance of the saints and I believe in total depravity, but I personally don't believe in I struggle with limited atonement. I also struggle with predestination. And I was telling them like that I don't, and they're like, if you believe in some of them, you have to believe in all of them, or you can't believe in some of them. Like, do you know what I'm saying? They were trying to argue to me that you either have to believe in all of Tulip or you can't believe in any of it. And I was like...
So there are some people that make that argument. I understand where it comes from, but it's not necessarily true. There are certain parts that if you believe, you have to believe the others. Like, there are some that, like, I couldn't say that I believe in total depravity, but I don't believe in irresistible grace. That wouldn't work.
That wouldn't work.
Then there's no possibility for salvation.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Or like I couldn't say I believe in unconditional election, but I don't believe in limited atonement. That wouldn't work either. So some of them do have to go together, but at the end of the day, like there are some that don't.
Molinists believe that Christ died sufficiently for all, but only efficiently for believers.
Say it again.
Molinists, they believe that Jesus Christ died sufficiently for everybody.
That's really the definition of limited atonement. You know, like that's how Calvinists explain limited atonement. It's that God died in a vague or general sense for all of mankind. He died. His death has the capacity to accomplish the salvation of all people, but he died only in a specific sense for some people.
Yeah, but Molinists would argue that when Jesus died, it was in the mindset of for everybody. But Calvinists wouldn't argue that. They would say that Jesus knew he was only dying for that certain group of people.
Well, because here's the idea, this is where I actually do like the Molinistic argument here, where it's sort of like Jesus died for those that he knew would choose to follow him, which I understand and that makes sense. And like I used to make that argument myself, but I also love the Calvinistic explanation of limited atonement once I begin to understand it. Because here's how it goes: if God the Father did not predestine, if he didn't choose who was going to be saved, then he was not dying for the accomplishment of salvation. He was dying for the possibility of salvation. And in essence, he could have died, and then then there could have just been no one that got saved in the Christianity.
Why do you think that's wrong? What's wrong with that?
Well, this is what I'm saying, is that I simply believe that we follow a God who is a God of specificity. Yeah, we follow a God who is exact and precise. He doesn't do plan B. He knows what he's doing, and so again, for me, and I think just across the biblical narrative, it's more important. I don't understand when people are so upset with the idea of God choosing.
Because I think it's because like, we think things have to be just. We don't understand.
But we have to understand like the entirety of the Old Covenant.
Yeah,
that's like God's specific and exclusive love for Israel. Like, he's not against choosing. He does it all the time. You know? And so...
What do you think about the idea with that? One of the things I struggle with Calvinism is that the idea of God is the author of sin. Like, what does that even mean?
William
Lane Craig talks a lot about that.
This is something that only... that not all Calvinists believe.
It's
a teaching that's really difficult for me.
Me too.
like I heard about
I've
it
looked into
recently.
it.
I learned more about it at a men's theology class I go to in my church, and the pastor that was explaining it himself believes that God is that God ordained sin, because the most common language we hear is that God allows sin, but they're basically like, no, God played an active role in the fall, like he ordained the fall.
He predestined the fall to happen.
Right. But we still look at it as even, and here's how they justify it then, is that God is not responsible. Man is still totally responsible. And so that's the thing that people don't understand about Calvinism, and to shift away from this conversation, because I don't agree that God is the author of sin. I think there's
really? You don't?
paradoxes there. No, I don't believe that God is the
Good. I like that.
So
That's the thing I struggle
believe
with
that God
most.
plays a more active role than we often portray him to. But I believe that this is something that's paradoxical that we're not going to be able to understand, no matter how many pretty phrases we come up with. But moving from there, what I don't like is, again, it's another straw man argument, is that Calvinists don't believe in free will, which isn't true.
That isn't true.
We only believe in... So this is why people think that we believe this, because they don't understand what irresistible grace is.
Which is a lot of people that argue against Calvinism. They don't understand what it means.
Yeah, they're just sort of like, so do you believe in Calvinism or free will? And I'm like, huh? Those two things are not mutually exclusive. Like, what we understand is that man is, by the grace of God, pulled from his depravity, because in our depravity, we know only to choose that which is not God, because our flesh reigns supreme. So everything we do, we're going to be doing in opposition to God, right?
Yeah.
And so what we see in Irresistible Grace is that man is presented the gospel on like a silver platter, and he knows not how to say no. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Is that, yes, man still chooses to receive the gospel, but we also understand that because of irresistible grace and because of what we know what he would do with his depravity, if he gets saved, that means he simply does not have the capacity to say no, but still has the will to do it.
Yeah.
Which is just, again, it's a complicated subject people don't understand, but...
Yeah. That's the biggest thing I struggled with, is the idea. When I looked into it pretty in-depthly, and I struggled with the idea that God is the author of sin. Are you a Calvinist or a Christian from Georgia?
Bro, I really do get people calling me a heretic for being a Calvinist all the time.
Dude, here's the thing. When it comes down to it, in its most simplest form, I just think roses are better than tulips. Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get it. Yeah, he gets it.
I don't like it, but I get it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I like have like moved away from this conversation for a while, so it's not as like painfully obnoxious to talk about anymore.
I like talking about it with people that know what they're talking about. I don't like talking about it with people that don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, because I'll explain it and then I just get hit with the same arguments, and I'm like, you didn't listen to anything I just said, because I preemptively answered the argument that you just gave me 50 minutes ago.
I really like how middle knowledge answers the question of like, if you've never heard the gospel before.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing for me is I don't look to Calvinism for the answer in that question.
What do you look for?
Okay.
Do you look for Molinism?
No. I don't think that these three views are. I don't think that it's like essential that we look to any of these three views. I think we just look at the Bible. Yeah. Hello?
Yeah. Oh, you glitched out. You're back now.
Oh, okay. I think that we just look to the Bible. So my explanation is Romans chapter 1, where it just simply talks about the concept of general revelation. God has generally revealed himself to all mankind, and that is what brings man to condemnation. And so what I will say is, because again I don't believe in double predestination, the way I understand it is that people don't go to hell because God didn't. So here's the way I explain it, and this is an analogy that Garrett actually posted a video about, and it was someone basically arguing against Calvinism, and I made the explanation here. And so here's how I will look at with the people who never heard the gospel. So if your house is on fire, okay, and no one comes to rescue you, what kills you?
The fire.
The fire. The fire, right?
Yeah.
But if your house is burning down and someone does come to rescue you, why do you survive?
The person rescued.
The person, right. So we don't say that the first person is destroyed because of the absence of a firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so here's what I understand is that if sin is fire and we are the house we are burning down, we won't be destroyed because of the absence of a firefighter. We are destroyed because of the fire itself.
Yeah.
And so that logic being applied then, no one goes to hell because God told them they have to. People go to hell because they choose it for themselves.
Okay, how is that just, though, for people that never hear the gospel or never have the same opportunities? Because, like, for us, we grow up obviously hearing about Christianity, even if you're not a Christian, every single day. How do you think that's fair?
Because the hearing of the gospel or the absence of such does not remove from one the guiltiness of their sin.
Sure, I understand that, but, I mean, it comes down to the same question of, like,
well, the issue here is that
it comes down to the same thing as Calvinism, bro. Like, the question of how is it fair if some people get sent to heaven and some are elected into some are elected
it's operating under the assumption that man is somehow entitled to salvation.
I understand that.
And so I don't view it as this great evil because I understand that it's not God who's unfair or evil. You know? And so here's the other argument I will give is that and especially those who believe in the inclusive theology, which is basically that people who never hear the gospel are saved.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how I respond. Why would we ever evangelize if that was true?
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. No, that's stupid.
Just shut your mouth and never talk about the gospel ever, and everyone will go to heaven.
Yeah.
If that's how it works. And so that's why I think that there's this divide between general revelation and special revelation, because all of mankind, except for children and basically the mentally impaired, can observe general revelation and know that there is something bigger than them. And that is what condemns them. And it's not even just something bigger than them. They know that they have the law written on their heart and still choose to violate it. We choose sin consciously. We choose disobedience to God. Even if we don't know the exact character of God, when we sin, we know that we are sinning, even if we don't know God. And so there are times when before we have the Holy Spirit, that we may be sinning unknowingly, but there are times that we are obviously committing like moral indecencies. And
So why do you reject middle knowledge and how that answered the question? Do you know how I answered it? Do you need me to explain?
Go ahead. I have an idea, but
basically, sorry, my phone was on said. Middle knowledge says that because God knows what would happen in any situation, that God was able to place those people knowing that they would have never chosen God or chosen Jesus in any situation. And so he knows that they would have never done that. And that's why they've never heard the gospel. It didn't even matter because they already sentenced themselves because they are sinful. And because they did consciously choose sin, even though the law was written on their heart, that they already sentenced themselves to hell.
So here's why I don't love that.
Okay.
Because I think it is an attempt to remove from God something that we perceive as evil. So it's almost like we're like, oh, I think that this removes any moral error from God. Mm-hmm. Even with the view that I propose to you, no evil or unfairness or disjustice rests on God's shoulders.
Yeah.
Biblically, there is no evil. It just sounds more comfortable for us to be like, oh, well, God knows how it would go. You're right, he does. But it's just, for me, much of Molinism just feels like the concept of middle knowledge as a whole just feels like a way to remove from God an evil that we are prescribing to him. Mm-hmm. Because of our understanding of what is right and what is fair. So that's why I say sometimes it feels like a cop-out.
Yeah, that's actually, that's one of the best arguments, in my opinion, against Molinism that I think about a lot, because it really does limit, it puts a limit based on what we think are the problems with what God says. But
I feel like it's interjecting our own morality into that of God. Mm-hmm. And like it makes, I think in a sense it does align in many ways with Calvinism, but it removes the uncomfortability of the truths of Calvinism and sort of justifies them.
Yeah.
From a...
there's like I don't know how well you know Molinism. There's actually like kind of two sides, and I lean a lot more to the Calvinist side, in the sense that I believe so God knows in every situation. I don't know how much you know, so I'm taking it from like kind of the basics. God knows in every situation. When I'm driving in my car, right, and I pull up to a four-way stop, I'm like, if I go now, I'll get hit, or if I go now, I won't get hit, right? I have to make those justifications in my mind of what's going to happen. And so God knows that on a mass level of all the different things that I would do in all the different situations. And so I believe that God does, and similarly to Calvinism, that God is able to predestine me based on that and put me in the situation in which I would pick God. So there's one side of people that believe that God elects based off what we would do in our own free will. But another side of Molinism says that God sees, like, if there's like, let's say there's 10,000 worlds that Ryan Burgess had in 10,000 ways I live my life, and there was like 10 of those ways I picked Jesus, but God elected me and predestined me to pick him, so he placed me in one of those 10 worlds in which I chose him. So he can predestine based off what I would do, but it would still be fully God's sovereign predestination placing me in that situation, but also me having the free will to do it, even though God placed me in order that he knew my free will would do it.
To me,